Some people speak less not because they have nothing to say, but because they've learned that silence carries a truth words cannot hold. They've seen what happens when every pause is filled, when every thought is forced into sound. And so, over time, they've chosen something else. Not avoidance, but presence. The quiet kind. The one that doesn't need to win an argument or fill a void. The one that simply exists. Maybe you're one of them. Maybe you've been called distant, cold, or hard to read. But deep down, you know it's not about distance. It's about depth. There's a world inside you that words could never do justice to. You see, silence isn't emptiness. It's a form of clarity. It's what happens when the noise outside stops matching the rhythm inside. Some people find peace in conversation. Others find it in stillness. And those who prefer silence often aren't trying to hide. They're just listening, even when others can't hear what they hear. It's in the small moments, walking home at night when the city finally exhales, hearing your own footsteps and realizing they have a voice of their own, sitting with someone you care about and feeling that nothing needs to be said, watching the light move across the floor, understanding that everything passes. And that's okay. But silence is not always easy to carry. In a world that rewards volume, quietness can feel like invisibility. People who live in silence often become observers, noticing everything, feeling everything, and yet rarely being noticed themselves. They're the ones who stay, after everyone has left, rearranging thoughts that no one else bothered to understand. They carry conversations in their minds that will never be spoken. They relive moments that others have already forgotten. Sometimes, they even feel guilt for not being louder, as if their worth depended on how much space they take up. But it doesn't. Their strength lies in something far subtler. They understand that not everything needs to be said to be real. Psychologically, silence is often a defense mechanism, but also a form of mastery. People who prefer silence usually have learned to regulate emotion through stillness. They process things deeply. They think before reacting. It's not detachment, it's discernment. The brain of a quiet person works differently. It searches for patterns, for meaning beneath the surface. They often value authenticity over attention. They've seen how words can be misused to manipulate, to impress, to hide insecurity. And so they use them carefully, like a craftsman choosing the right tool. Every sentence they speak carries weight because it had to pass through layers of thought before reaching the air. And yet there's a paradox in this kind of mind. The more someone understands, the less they feel the need to speak. But the less they speak, the more misunderstood they become. They end up trapped between clarity and isolation. People mistake their quiet for arrogance when it is really humility. The humility of knowing how fragile truth can be once it leaves your lips. Silence becomes both their refuge and their prison. They long to be understood, but only by those who can listen beyond the noise. It's like watching rain through a window. The world outside is chaotic. Voices, arguments, laughter, movement. And you sit there, tracing the drops as they fall. You realize how small everything becomes when observed through silence. The rain doesn't explain itself, and yet it communicates perfectly. It's in that moment that you understand why you've always felt safer in silence. It's not about avoiding life. It's about witnessing it. It's about being fully awake, even when no one notices. There's also something sacred in those who choose silence. They are the keepers of emotional space. When others speak, they listen, not just to words, but to pauses, to tone, to the meaning that hides between breaths. They are often the first to sense when something is wrong, even when no one says it. Their empathy is quiet, but it's vast. They heal not by talking, but by being present. In relationships, they are the ones who love through small gestures. a look, a hand on the shoulder, a moment of stillness shared. To them, silence is not absence, it's connection in its purest form. And yet silence has its shadows. It can protect you, but it can also isolate you. There's a fine line between peace and loneliness. Sometimes what you call tranquility is actually withdrawal. The mind convinces itself that it doesn't need anyone, that solitude is enough. But even the quietest soul needs resonance. Not noise, resonance. A space where their silence can meet someone else's and form something that doesn't require explanation. That's why the most profound relationships are built not through constant talk, but through mutual understanding of silence. There comes a moment, though, when silence stops being a choice and becomes a wall. You stop expressing even when you want to. You convince yourself that no one will understand, so you don't try. You start speaking less, feeling less seen, until your inner world begins to echo back your own quietness. That's the danger of silence, when it stops being peace and starts being fear. When your calm becomes a disguise for pain. The mind that prefers silence must always remember silence should heal, not hide. It should bring clarity, not distance. And maybe that's the real revelation. You're not emotionless. You're overflowing. You don't speak because you feel too much, because words would only break the spell of what you're experiencing. You stand before beauty and tragedy with the same stillness, not because you're numb, but because you sense the sacred in both. The world calls you reserved, but you know it's reverence. You've learned that sometimes the most profound act of communication is to stay quiet, to let the moment breathe, to trust that not every truth needs to be said out loud to be known. Silence, in its truest form, is not the absence of sound, but the presence of understanding. It's what remains after all explanations fail. It's the space between two heartbeats, the pause before forgiveness, the calm after surrender. It's the sound of someone finally coming to peace with themselves. Maybe that's what you've been seeking all along. Not applause, not agreement, not even words. Just peace. If you felt something in these words, if you recognized a part of yourself in this quiet space, leave a single dot in the comments. I'll know you were here.